A very good morning to all children. Hope you all are fine. Okay, so am I? I am also equally fine at home, staying at home, safe at home, and we are continuing with our video. So I am your biology teacher at Dr. Kishan School, and so as part of the lesson, we are learning about the structure of neuron, about the human excretory system. So this is our fourth chapter, wherein in the previous video I had explained about the structure of the nephron. So I had given the diagram to you all. I did not explain much. So further I would like you all to understand the diagram. Hope you all have completed the diagram what I have explained, what I had drawn on the board in the previous video. So I am continuing with the same diagram here. Once again I repeat the diagram, then I would go to the urine formation, the process, because the understanding the diagram is very important for the formation of the urine. Okay, as I said, the kidney, each kidney would contain around 1.3 to 1.8 million nephrons. Okay, so when we consider each such nephron, okay, it is made up of what? What it is made up of? It is made up of the Malpighian body. Okay, the first part is the Malpighian body. What is that Malpighian body made up of? Do you remember what is the Malpighian body made up of? See, in the textbook also the diagram is given very nicely, and so the Malpighian body. So this whole thing is the Malpighian body. It is made up of a cup-like structure, outer cup-like structure. That cup-like structure is called as the Bowman's capsule, and inside that you have got a fine network of blood capillaries, okay, which are formed by the efferent arteriole. Here I have given the diagram, that is the efferent arteriole. This efferent arteriole comes from, it's a branch of the renal artery, isn't it? So it branches out into many such arterioles, and one such arterial branch enters into the Bowman's capsule, and it forms a fine network of capillaries called as the glomerulus. Okay, now this glomerulus, after forming a fine network of capillaries, it comes out as efferent arteriole. Now, this efferent arteriole is wider than the efferent arteriole. Why do you think it is like that? The efferent arteriole is narrower than the efferent arteriole. Question is also given in the textbook on page number C79. The question is there, why do you think the diameter of the efferent arteriole is less than that of the efferent arteriole? Why do you think so? See, as the blood flows the efferent arteriole and it enters into the blood capillaries here. Okay, so now what happens? But it cannot go. Generally, what would be the tendency? If it has got a easy pathway, it will continue going. But here, what happens? As the blood comes into this, but it cannot go quickly through the efferent arteriole because the lumen, or it is very narrow. Okay, so the inlet is wider, outlet is narrower. So it cannot go easily. Then what happens? Because of that only here easily the filtration occurs. And this is surrounded by the blood capillaries are surrounded by a fine net, the layers of simple squamous epithelial cells. And those simple squamous epithelial cells that are there in the Bowman's capsule, they are called as the podocytes. They are called as podocytes. Here I write under the glomerulus only I write so that you can remember. So they are called as the podocytes. They contain the podocytes. So because of that the filtration can occur easily. Later we shall be studying about that. So now that is the first part. So what is this? The Malpighian body consisting of the Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. Okay, the efferent arteriole brings in the blood containing the waste substances, and from here one blood capillary comes out. Okay, blood vessel comes out, that is the efferent arteriole. Now after that this Bowman's capsule will continue as a long tubular structure, and that long tubular structure is the first convoluted tubule. It is the first convoluted tubule, or another name for that is the proximal convoluted tubule. First convoluted tubule or proximal convoluted tubule. Then you can see that it takes a hairpin shape bend. Okay, this bend is called as the Henle's loop or loop of Henle. Henle's loop or loop of Henle. Okay, then Henle's loop or loop of Henle. Then after that, this will further take into many more folds and it joins into the collecting duct. Okay, before that, the last part of that nephron is called as The last part of the nephron is called as DCT, or distal convoluted tubule, or distal convoluted tubule, or the second convoluted tubule. Second convoluted tubule or distal convoluted tubule. Understood, children? So now, so this is the part of the nephron that we have studied, and now after that this efferent arteriole further forms a fine network of blood capillaries. Okay, and this fine network of blood capillaries would be surrounding the complete tubule part. Okay, the nephric tubule part or the renal tubule part. Okay, this part is completely covered by the fine network of capillaries, and these are also made up of a single layer of cells. Already we know that the capillary is made up of single layer of cells, isn't it? So just like that, and this tubule that is there, this whole tubule, the renal tubule, will also contain a very thin layer, and it is also made up of single layer of cells. Why it is present like that? So that continuously there will be exchange of substances between these two. Okay, so that is, if it is something is there in the nephric tubule, from there the substances can go into the peritubular network, and from the peritubular network again the substances can come back into the nephron. Okay, so between these tubules both there is exchange of substances. For that this is present. Okay, so here we can see that it is made up of Malpighian body and the renal tubule consisting of all these parts. Now we shall study how the urine formation occurs. Okay, what are the different steps involved in the urine formation? Okay, what are those steps? For that we shall see about what are the different steps involved. So you can take out the page number 18. You can see the mechanism of urine formation. Very important question as examination point of view. So just I shall rub these parts where it is not needed. Only surrounding that I'll keep, and I'll write the steps. Okay, diagram I am going to keep. Okay, diagram I am going to keep like that, so that you can understand about the urine formation. Only those terms that are needed there, that I will keep. Okay, so here you can see that the nephron diagram is there. What are the key parts that I have to show now? That only I will keep. Okay, so here you can see that this is the efferent arteriole. A I have written. You just understand that efferent. Okay, efferent arteriole. Next, this one is glomerulus. So the first step that will be there in urine formation, that will be called as glomerular filtration. The first step is glomerular filtration. Okay, children, this is the first step. Here I am explaining about the urine formation. Here I am writing, under this I am writing the urine formation. Okay, so the first step is glomerular filtration. Second one, after that the second step is tubular reabsorption, that will be occurring inside the PCT. Okay, this Bowman's capsule also I rub. Okay, here it is the tubular. The second step is tubular reabsorption. Listen to the key words I am using. Those steps, those names are very important. Okay, the first one is glomerular filtration. Second one is tubular reabsorption. Now the third one is, okay, here the third one is tubular secretion, that is in the DCT. Okay, tubular secretion. Okay, so this tubular reabsorption is occurring in the ECT or the first convoluted tubule, and the tubular secretion is occurring in the DCT or the distal convoluted tubule. So the first step of that occurs in the glomerular filtration. The first step is called as glomerular filtration. So what happens in the glomerular filtration? Okay, so and one more last one is this one. What is that? Concentration of urine, that I have not told. So that one will be in different places. The fourth step will be concentration of urine. Altogether they will help in the formation of urine. Concentration of urine. You all can take out the textbook. If you got the textbook, you can underline all these boxes that are there. They are all very, very important. The first one is what? Here, the glomerular filtration. Okay. Now we can relate to the term just now I have told about the afferent arteriole and the efferent arteriole. So as the blood enters from the afferent arteriole into this glomerulus, into the fine capillaries. Okay. So where is the pathway to go? They have to go through the efferent arteriole, but the efferent arteriole is very narrow. Then what happens, as the pathway is narrow, they get filled here. The pressure is applied. Okay, the pressure is applied in the glomerulus. Because of that pressure, what happens, it gets compressed. See, when you are filtering the tea, okay, the tea leaves, the cup is there. Okay, the tea filter is there. Okay, that have a fine network. Okay, mesh like tea. On that, the tea leaves keep falling, isn't it? So they have to go somewhere. So easily through that they are able to go. If you apply pressure easily, all that will go down or not. So just like that here, what happens? Pressure is applied on this, and as they are surrounded by the podocytes or the simple squamous epithelial cells, because of that, what happens? The filtration gets easier, and all the blood comes into the PCT. Most of the blood is filtered through that. Okay, as a result of this, most of the blood is filtered through that, and except for the RBCs, most of the substances will be filtering through that, and they would be entering into the Bowman's, into the PCT. I will just present this one. Okay, so the blood flows through this. Okay, it forms. It cannot go there. Only some amount can go through that. Rest of it would be coming. So the first step is this one, that is glomerular filtration. Once the blood CT or the first convoluted tubule, after the completion of the glomerular filtration, whatever primary is urine is formed, that is called as primary urine. It forms the primary urine. Okay, so this primary urine will be more or less similar to the blood in case of the concentration of different types of salts and other things, because they are not filtered properly. They are all remaining in the blood. So with that, it enters into the PCT. Okay, only the cellular part that is there, all that may remain. So that could be entering into the efferent arteriole. But most of the salts and other substances, waste products, salts, all these, even though the useful substances like vitamins, glucose, all these things also would be entering into the PCT as primary urine. So this is the primary urine. So it is more or less similar to the blood. So now what has to happen? If the body leaves like that, then most of the useful things are also lost by the body, isn't it? So it cannot afford to lose all the useful things that are there for the body. So what it has to do? So for that reason only, we have got the second step, that is tubular reabsorption. And here we see that the efferent arteriole will continue, and it forms a fine network of capillaries all around the renal tubule. Okay, so now this is the reason why it is there is, even though it is filtering everything here, the blood can take back whatever is required. Whatever is not required, it will give, and whatever is not required, what is required for the body, it will be taking back. So in this part, that is in the PCT, the first part of the renal tubule is called as the first convoluted tubule or the PCT. So in this region, we see that whatever is required for our body, all that would be absorbed back. So from which side to which side it has to go? See, in the first step, we have seen that from the blood it has entered into the glomerulus. From there, it has entered into the PCT. Now in the second step, before it has to throw all the waste, it wants to take back. Whenever we are giving any waste, even to the paper fellow, we will once check or not. Okay, this paper I could keep, or this notebook I can keep for the next year. I can give it to my juniors, like that. You all think or not? So just like that, without thinking, the body does not throw the substances outside the body. So whatever is required, once it has to recheck and take those substances inside. So as part of that, in this PCT, what happens is the tubular reabsorption. As part of the tubular reabsorption, it would be taking up the substances back into the blood. That means in this region you could be seeing that the substances are moving into the opposite direction. That is into the blood. The substances are moving. Okay, it goes into the blood, and as all this is made up of a single layer of cells. Okay, single layer of cells, easily the substances could be moving. Here I have shown some different, but they are all tightly packed. There is no space between them. So they are all tightly packed, so easily the movement can occur. So here what happens, the useful substances are taken into the PCT. From the PCT they are going into the peritubular network, sorry. Okay, so what are those substances that the body wants to reabsorb? Here, the primary urine will take back, and from the primary urine, the blood capillaries will take back substances like glucose, amino acids, okay, vitamin C, potassium, calcium, sodium, chlorides, and 75% of the water. It cannot lose the water so much, isn't it? So here, in this place, it will be taking potassium, calcium, sodium, 75% of water. Okay, vitamin C, glucose, amino acids, all these substances are needed for the body, isn't it? So all those things again the blood wants to take back from the PCT. So all those substances are, it is taking back. Along with that, it is also taking back 75% of the water, because the water it cannot lose so much. Okay, so that is very important, and this occurs in the tubular reabsorption. I am not writing all that here, as you have got the textbooks. From that you can note down from the box. You can refer the gist book also. So in the second tubular reabsorption, what happens from the PCT to the, I can say from PCT to the capillaries. Okay, from the PCT to the capillaries, the blood would be flowing back. Okay, so that is what happens. Now, after that, the blood would be flowing through the loop of Henle. So, in the Henle's loop, again, there is a 10% of water taken. Here in the Henle's loop, again, 10% of water is 10% of water is taken back into the this one. Okay, similarly it would be losing the, there is exchange of this one. What is that? Calcium and fluorine. Okay, calcium fluoride. So all that would be occurring, which you would be studying in higher classes. I don't want to go in detail about that filtration in the Henle's loop. Okay, so in the Henle's loop also there is filtration. Okay, so here it would be taking the water again back into that. Okay, again the body would be taking 10% of the water. Like this it is taking. Understood? So this is the second, in the Henle's loop whatever filtration is occurring, along with that even 10% of water is taken. Now after that, as the urine is passing through that, it reaches the DCT, the third part, isn't it? This whole thing is called as the DCT, you know that, isn't it? So this DCT, here in the DCT what happens? Here, see finally it has to throw outside the body. The urine is almost formed. Now, any more waste is there in the body or not, the body will check. Okay, so in this part what happens, whatever waste is there, that will be given back to the blood capillaries. So what could be the waste materials that could be there in the blood? Like some amount of urea, salts, okay, sodium, potassium, hydrogen ions. Okay, all these waste substances which are more in the body, they are not required for the body. All those substances would be given back. So here in this DCT2, so here it will be in the opposite direction from the capillaries to the DCT. There I told that from the PCT to the capillaries, the useful substances are going. Here from the capillaries to the DCT, what is going? Most of them are waste. So like this you can remember here, and here it will be the useful substances. Okay, reabsorption. So again the blood is taking, that's why we call as reabsorption. Secretion is whatever the blood is having the waste. Some has still not been filtered properly. So all that is giving back to the DCT. Okay, so this process here, as it is secreting into the tubule, the waste materials are being secreted into the tubule. So we call this as tubular secretion. Whereas in tubular reabsorption, we see that from the tubules, the useful substances are being sent into the blood capillaries. Understood? So this is the third step, wherein from the tubule into the tubule the waste substances are taken. For example, like the urea, uric acid, creatinine, different types of salts, ions like H plus ion, sodium, chloride, all these. If they are in excess quantity which are not needed for the body, then they are all thrown outside as waste. Okay, so this is the third step that we have seen. Okay, this is the third step. Did I write here third step? Okay, so this is the third step. Understood, children? So what are the first three steps? First is the glomerular filtration. Second one is the tubular reabsorption. Third one is the tubular secretion. And now the last one, that is concentration of urine. Already I have told how the concentration of urine occurs in the different parts, isn't it? First one only we see that already whatever urine is there, okay, depending upon the body's requirement, the urine is diluted or concentrated. So if at all it is summer, okay, we cannot afford to lose more water. So at that time we generally observe that the urine is concentrated. But if it is rainy season or if it is very cool, then we see that the urine is dilute, more dilute. How it is more dilute? The urine is lost as more water is there in the body and it can afford to lose the water. So at that time what happens, during this urine formation, complete urine formation, at different levels the water is reabsorbed. The body would be taking back the water. So the first place is in the PCT, where I told that 75% here, 75% of the water is lost. Okay, it is taken back, reabsorbed. Similarly, in Henle's loop, around 10%. And still whatever is remaining, okay, that is cross-checked once before it enters into the collecting duct. Into this as it goes. Before that, once again, the urine is checked. Okay, whether it is to be lost or it is to be retained. Now, depending upon the concentration of the urine, the requirement of the body. Okay, and that is called as formation of hypertonic urine. Okay, or another name is concentration of urine, or another name, can we say this is, or formation of hypertonic. Hypertonic means what? More salt and less solute, isn't it? More or less water. Okay, so here the body is trying to make concentrated urine, that is nothing but formation of hypertonic urine. So don't get confused, both are same only. Concentrate, formation of hypertonic urine. Understood, children? So here we see concentration of urine or formation of hypertonic urine. So in this, what happens? How it is, as I told that in different places it is taken up. Now, whatever is remaining, it is taken up with the help of a hormone. Okay, and that hormone is called as vasopressin. That hormone is called as vasopressin. Okay, this one is vasopressin. So just before leaving in this region, okay, so if it is in summer, what happens? We sweat a lot. Okay, our body has to maintain the body temperature. Homeostasis has to be maintained. So at that time we cannot afford to lose more water. So in that condition, this vasopressin would be secreted more. Okay, or it is also called as ADH, anti-diuretic hormone. Okay, it is called as anti-diuretic hormone. ADH or anti-diuretic hormone. So this, why is it secreted in the summer? As it has to concentrate. So at that time what happens? We see that already here 70% is lost, here 10% is lost. Whatever urine is there, that is further concentrated, and a very concentrated urine is sent from the nephron into the collecting duct with the help of the hormone, that is vasopressin. Since all these things are happening throughout the nephron, we call this thing, whole thing, as concentration of urine or formation of hypertonic urine. Understood, children? So here, so do you think what will happen in the winter? Is vasopressin produced in more quantity? Yes? No, it is not produced. Why do you think? Because in the winter, the body temperature is lower. Outside also the weather is much cooler. So at that time we don't sweat a lot. So we see that more number of times we tend to go to the for urination, and the urine is also more dilute. We tend to drink less water. isn't it? All this is because the vasopressin is produced in less quantity. Understood, children? So this is the role of vasopressin, very very important hormone. Okay, now those people who are having this hormone lesser, okay, if at all the vasopressin is produced in lesser quantity, then it is called, then the people suffer from a disease that is called as diabetes insipidus. Then they suffer from a disease that is called as diabetes insipidus. Diabetes insipidus. Okay, so if at all it is produced in less, ADH is produced in less quantity, then they suffer from this disease. So they tend to go more number of times for urination. The water is lost from the body as they don't have vasopressin. Understood, children? So once please go through the textbook and see. Okay. Okay, so here a quick recap again, because it is one of the most important thing, that is the urine formation. In the urine formation, what are the steps? First one is the glomerular filtration, second one is tubular reabsorption, and third one is tubular secretion. Fourth one is concentration of urine or formation of a hypertonic urine. In glomerular filtration, what are the key things that we should know? It is very very important for a 4 marks question also, or 2 marks question. With the diagram you have to explain all that, so you need to know that a lot. Okay, children, so here in this we see that the blood enters from the efferent arteriole into this. Here pressure is built so that the blood cannot enter easily into the efferent arteriole. So the blood enters as primary urine into the PCT, as most of the urine enters into the PCT. Now here again the reabsorption of the useful substances occurs from the PCT into the blood capillaries. So that's why it is called as tubular reabsorption. Then from there the primary urine passes through the Henle's loop, and apart from that, here in the tubular reabsorption we see that 75% of the water is reabsorbed. Then the urine passes through the loop of Henle. Here further exchange of substances like the sodium, chlorine, chlorides, okay, water, all these things occur in the loop of Henle. Then from there it goes into the DCT, where tubular secretion occurs. That means whatever waste substances are there, like the urea, uric acid, creatinine, or different types of salts, hydrogen ions, sodium ions, chloride ions, all these substances are again given back from the blood capillaries into the DCT. Okay, after that, as the urine enters into the collecting duct, just before that, what happens? This urine is further concentrated. Already 75% over there, 10% here, and further whatever is there, that is further concentrated depending upon the requirement of the body, with the help of a hormone that is called as vasopressin. Another name is antidiuretic hormone. Understood? So now, for like this, the formation of the urine occurs and it enters through this collecting duct, and this collecting duct is connected to many more such nephrons. All the nephrons will be giving the urine into the collecting duct, and this collecting duct will go into the calyces. From there it will go into the pelvis region, from where the urine will be collected by the ureter. Understood? So like this is the whole process of urine formation in human beings. So all of you have understood. So please note down all these in the running notes. Compulsorily each and everyone has to write down and draw the diagram and send those images to me. Then you can also answer why more urine is produced in winter. Just now I have told the reason also, isn't it? So you can all write that. What happens if reabsorption of water does not take place? Then we tend to lose the water, isn't it? So what will happen if we lose the water? Dehydration occurs and the person may even die. Okay, so this is about urine formation. Further we shall be studying about the other parts of the excretory system in the next video. Thank you children for now.